Welcome to the Good GMs Podcast. I'm EE Morris, and today's episode is The Keeper Out of Space. And now, here's Chuck and James.
Good, so good. Good. So very good.
Whew, here we are. Welcome to Good GMs Podcast. I'm James. I'm joined with my co-host, who goes by the name of
Chuckie T. Hi, everybody. Glad you're here.
That's right. We have an amazing episode today. We call ourselves Good GMs, but apparently once in a while we can bring on a good keeper or a great keeper for that matter. We are blessed to have the one and only Mike Mason, been shaping the most influential RPGs like since 1981. This game came out, and he's been working with Chaosium for like over a decade now.
Yeah.
Am I right there? Helped write this book behind me here. ENnie Award-winning Keeper 7th Edition Keeper Rulebook, the Pulp Cthulhu starter set, and 40 more. More than 40 more. So if you've never heard of Mike Mason or you've never heard of Call of Cthulhu, you're probably already in a cult, maybe. But here we are. So thanks so much, Mike, for joining us today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. My gosh. Woo! Well, Mike, or Mr. Mason, I apologize. Honestly, for the whole conceit of the podcast is that James and I believe that we are okay GMs.
We're good. We're not okay. We're better than okay.
No, we're okay. Because the only way you get good is by listening to and learning from other GMs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's why we're reaching out to anyone that's willing to come forward and, just help support the community. Because it's a hobby we all love and a hobby that we just thrive on. So thank you so much. Mr. Mason, I guess let's start with, for you, when you get the opportunity to play and the story is done and you've walked away, what are some traits that you remember that make you look back and say, that was a good GM?
Well, first of all, let me say thanks for inviting me on. It's great to be here.
Yes.
And also, I think number one, the obvious answer is, did I have a good time? Did I enjoy the game? And obviously, that's not just down to the GM. That's down to everyone who sat around the table, in real life or virtually with me. But the GM clearly plays a critical part of that. And so I guess number one, did I enjoy the game? Number two, I think, is there's probably gonna be a moment in the game that kind of stays with me. Oftentimes that could be the climax, how it ended, especially if it ended in a kind of crazy way and it was kind of a lot of fun or shockingly horrific or whatever it might have been. Often it's the ending, but it could be sometime before then. It could be that point in the scenario where the information finally kind of came through and the penny dropped. We kind of understood the reality of our situation as the players and what we actually had to do. And sometimes that can be, that kind of like revelation kind of is a good moment in the game. Right. But often, as I say, it's the climax. But and really, it's a kind of a combination of those things. And how did the GM, the keeper, how did they make that work? How did they make that happen? How do I feel? What was my relationship with them? And obviously, what was it like with the other people? But clearly, what was it like with me in terms of my personal view on the game? Do I feel that they helped the game to flow? Do I feel that they were part of the river of the game? They were making it flow, or were they an obstacle to us having fun?
Right.
I think
and that can happen.
That can happen. There's been plenty of stories and experiences where unfortunately, the GM was not the river; they were a wall, and the fun.
They were the dam.
The fun was on the other side of the wall, and there was no way we were going to get through to that fun, unfortunately.
Oh.
But that's you live and learn. But that, I guess, that would be kind of what my initial reaction would be. Yeah.
Thank you.
And would that be for you being that river? Like, I mean, I'm just continuing with the same question, but would you say it's more about like creating that atmosphere? Would you say it's more about the like sandbox or railroad? Like does it matter? Like with Call of Cthulhu, is it easier to run an investigative horror by leading them by like I see you have a pet carrier behind you. Do you let them pull or do you make them heal? These are big questions. I'm sorry.
You're channeling me down into a certain way of thinking, and all of those things matter, and they're all irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether it's a sandbox or linear scenario, I don't care.
As long as
did I enjoy the game? That's what I'm asking myself, because I can enjoy a linear game just as much as a sandbox, and oft times I can enjoy a linear game more because I know where the ending is.
Right.
Because I've played in games where they've gone on and on and on, well past the time they should have stopped, because the players cannot stop themselves wanting to find every clue available to them in the entire universe, when the clue clearly told us all that the cultist sacrifice was happening at 12 o'clock at midnight in the house on the house on the hill. We know this.
Right.
We found it out.
We know this.
Why?
But why are we going to the library?
Going to the library. Yeah, because yeah. So yeah. I have a problem with that, because it's like no. We're telling a story. Let's tell the great story, and the great story is we get there, we stop them. That's
nice.
Yes. We were late. We couldn't stop talking to the librarian. But that's not fun. That's just boring. To me, the biggest crime in any role-playing game is it being dull. If it's dull,
yes,
I've lost interest, and so has everyone else, to be frank. And that, and so that dullness can be the design of the scenario itself isn't very, isn't great. It could be the presentation of the scenario that is coming through the GM. They may be not, facilitating it in a way that's working. It may be the players aren't playing along. Maybe the players are being a bit dull tonight. And all of these things, this is the kind of the magic of a role-playing game. Is it? There's not one thing makes it work. It's the magic is making all these things come together in the right amounts, and they kind of create this magic you don't get with any other hobby or pastime or entertainment media. It only works in role playing because role playing only works that way.
Oh wow.
Well, I always think of it like when I was a kid, I do it all by myself. As an only child, I did a lot by myself. But like being able to create entire universes and play with these things with my friends, and we just accepted the rules that we're knights today and we're fighting dragons, or we're soldiers and G.I. Joes are playing, and these are the rules of the game, and we all played them because we all had fun together. And that's kind of the a GM is not is just a player, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
I mean obviously the kind of converse of what I'm saying is the GM who is following a script, and normally it's a script that they've written, and they will not veer from it. So in their script, the players will go to A, B, C, D, E, and that will.
You're not writing a movie.
And the trouble is, the players, when they get to A, they want to go to Z because they've figured it out.
Chuckie, that means Z. Just so you know, Canadians and Brits have a different word for that.
And so that. And often, I term that as that inflexibility. And obviously players can be that too. My character would never do that kind of thing. Well, your character is no longer in the game because
then why are you playing?
Exactly.
You walked out of the game, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But, good looking, but goodbye. But so being flexible as a player and as your GM, it's kind of key, isn't it? You want to roll with the punches. You want to be creative. You want to see the opportunities. You want to go with them, whether you're a bunch of players or the keeper saying, "Hey, the players just come with this crazy idea. This sounds great. Let's run with it. Let's see what happens."
Mm-hmm.
Nice, I love it. If I could, because my wife was tickled when she found out that you were going to be sitting with us. She truly was. Because for the times that we've gone to Chaosium Con in Ann Arbor, having an opportunity just to say hi, that has really sincerely, like, she's like, "Oh my, are you serious? That's him." That was big. So when she found out you were sitting down, she's like, I wasn't joking. She's like, "I have questions." So one of the questions that she had was, you are, notorious for Call of Cthulhu and horror. Are there any other genres that you enjoy?
That's a great question. No one has ever asked me that question.
Thank you, dear. Thank you, honey.
Boom!
So, obviously, I love horror. I love horror role playing. I love horror films and fiction and all that. However, before I loved horror, I loved science fiction, and so I started as a very young child reading science fiction before I got into horror. So I've always had a soft spot for science fiction, which I guess kind of came together in an unhealthy marriage with Warhammer 40,000 and Inquisitor, which is kind of like horror sci-fi. So that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
However, things like systems or games I've always loved. There's an English one called SLA or Slay Industries, which has been revived recently.
Oh, right? Yes, yes. I just saw a blip about that. Nice.
Yeah, and they have their own house system, but they've actually just I think they're about to release a Savage Worlds version of the game as well.
Yes,
so that would be interesting to see.
See, we have two loves on. We love all games and we love all gamers, but Savage Worlds and Call of Cthulhu are the two systems that Chuck and I talk about most.
I find them very complementary. They're very different, and they do things. They do things differently for a really good reason. But it also means that the two games it creates do their things really well, I find, and so I'm a big fan of that stuff as well. So speaking of Savage Worlds, the other one I would say that I love is Westerns. So I grew up with Deadlands, which was the forerunner to Savage Worlds, and so forth. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, I'm showing for those just listening. I'm showing the horror companion from Savage Worlds, and Chaosium was good enough to share some of the mythos with them. So that's very cool.
Yeah,
because I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Chaosium has always been the kind of company that likes to get on with other games companies, and the Savage Worlds team, are good people, and so we like to, we like to support each other as we can. So yeah,
nice.
Quick question. Guess what? We don't have to precursor every question with this. I hope it's okay if I ask. Sorry, I'm still a bit nervous because we got. It's funny because when I was asking, like, who should we ask to be on our show to talk about horror and talk about this and that, and people were like, "Oh, you should get Mike Mason and you should get John Hook and you should get," and I'm like, "Yeah, why don't we also get like Wes Craven and George A. Romero?" Like, yeah, that'll happen. But okay, so back to the topic, I guess, which is like, I mean, it's nice to interview Mike Mason as Mike Mason, and that's awesome. But we brought you on to talk about keepering. Yeah. So what I want to get to is, what's the difference, do you think? Like, how would you say is the biggest thing that sets a keeper of arcane lore, aside from a GM, a storyteller, a DM? Like, is there a specific focus that you have when you're running Call of Cthulhu that you would think is crucial? Like, if you were just starting out?
In a way, no, I think they're all the same. And but I guess with Cthulhu, what you are looking for that you may not be looking for in other games is you're looking for those pieces of string that you can pull on, that when you pull on the string, it kind of makes things weirder or more scary. Which I mean, again, in a fantasy game, those strings you might pull on might be, the sense of adventure or exploration, or hey, this is going to be a major fight, so really get tooled up and you enjoy that kind of process. So every game's got its own kind of like, call them strings. Otherwise, call it bit strings. But in Cthulhu, what you're specifically looking for is those things. Now, obviously, one of the things I've said a few times in different podcasts is it's a horror game, but just like anything else that's horror, whether it's a film or a book, you can't have unremitting horror every second of your time. There's no horror book where literally every sentence is you'd never get through the book. You'd die of a heart attack.
No,
It's true. That's true, though.
or you get bored of it.
It becomes commonplace. So the same with horror movies. Even the most scary movie in the world will have downtime. There will have periods between the horror, and that's the same with a horror role playing game like Call of Cthulhu. You've got to set the tone and build up to the horror. And the thing is, horror.
Well, the best horror comes when your guard is down. Yeah. When the characters are in the house and they forgot that the zombie horde was out there.
And so that's why comedy and horror work very well. The Evil Dead films and that kind of, they work really well because you kind of you lower your guard, you're having a laugh, and then you hit them with something actually scary, and it can have a better effect. But obviously, horror is very hard to manufacture, which is why, as I say, you find these strings and you pull gently on them through the entirety of the game, trying to puncture a point. So, I guess if you think of my strings as tension, I'm pulling the tension, and I start the game. It's very gentle, very gently work it up until we come to a climactic point in the game where I'm pulling hard on that tension and really driving it up and driving up the players, and that's. I'm trying to manufacture a kind of sense of horror, but I can't do that without the players, and I can't do that.
Right. Well, you got to get them to have the other end of the
it becomes that kind of
string,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, and
like I love holding on to the string and letting them kind of go. Where's this going? Let them walk into the danger.
Again, I mean, with horror role playing, horror GMing. The real secret to it is understanding horror movies and understanding how they work, because that whole kind of thing about building tension, creating downtime so the horror is more essential. It's all part of that kind of mechanism, because you can't. It's like I go to conventions, and sometimes I get foolishly scheduled to run Call of Cthulhu at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and I tell the players, I can't run horror at 9 o'clock on the Sunday morning. It's not, the sun's out. We're all a bit bleary eyed from the night before. No, it's not a good time to run a horror game. So those games tend to be a bit more horror comedy, if you know what I mean. Whereas Saturday night, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening, the sun's gone down, the stars are out, and the eldritch piping in the air. Then
you're in the mood.
Then the mood's better, isn't it? And people are more ready to kind of get into the right kind of vibe for that. So that's important too. You can't just turn it on. You've got to try and create the right vibe to some degree, and that's not always possible. Some days you just have to play the game, enjoy the game for what it is, but every now and again, that kind of magical comes together, and the players are the ones who scare themselves. Really, you provide the information and let them kind of reach a conclusion and let the penny drop for them, and they find their own horror in it.
Right. Awesome.
I love that. I love that. So James has been going through, and he's been running us through Mask of Nyarlathotep. And so when because you mentioned conventions, which is one shots and things like that, and so when it comes to like this, because Call of Cthulhu, one of the big draws for Call of Cthulhu is the sanity mechanic.
Yeah.
And so there is that change from a one shot to a campaign. I was just wondering, could you help us out with helping to separate the mechanic from the narrative?
Yeah.
Because when you got a character that is like in a one shot, it's just ping, 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 ping. It can, because it's a one shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're doing the haunting. You're going to get the big scare when you walk into the house and see the
exactly.
statue at the end of the hall, or you're going to get a scare when the bed attacks or whatever. No spoilers.
It's been out 40 years.
Yeah, it's fair to spoil it.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Unless you're new to the game, then it's brand new, and that's cool. However, yeah. So I'm just gonna be very lazy and say it's like horror films, yeah. So if you're playing a one shot, you are literally playing a horror movie where your character is unlikely to see the dawn in the morning. If they make it to sunrise, well done. Have a gold star. But everyone, it's like Alien. Everyone's expendable. And that's the joy of a one shot, because you can literally, drive it like you just stole it, kind of thing. The analogy.
Amen.
However, a campaign is different. You're absolutely right. One of my issues, having worked and written and rewritten and developed what is now the current edition of Masters of Athotep, one of my issues with the original version was it just is this unnecessary character death that came all the way through it. You get to climb a wall, and in real life, if I climb a wall and fall down, I might hurt my leg. I could break my leg. Maybe I wouldn't necessarily, depending how high I go, I'm not going to kill myself because I won't climb that high without a rope. So in early masks, it could be, you've got to make a climb. Oh, you found the cobble, you're dead. The end. It's like, well, that's very unsatisfactory.
No.
That's just an example. But it could be just be, you I don't know, fell down this. You fail your dexterity. You get one roll. If you fail the roll, your character's dead or near enough dead. And so I call that very dull, and I think that's very dull for players. I think players get very frustrated. I do, as even if I'm just reading it, let alone running it or playing it. I get very frustrated with what's the word? With character deaths that are meaningless. Yeah,
agreed.
A meaningful character death, but specifically in a game like Call of Cthulhu, where it is about taking a heroic stand against the forces of darkness in however way you look at it. A meaningful death can be an ultimate ending. It can be a real high point for your game, your character, you as a player. Your character sacrifice themselves to save the world or whatever it is, and it becomes very meaningful and very poignant. However, just because they failed the dice roll and they poured poison over their hands and now they're dead, like that is not poignant, is not fun, and is frustrating. Right. So with masks and campaigns, it's very important to think about the longevity of the campaign and how your players are going to go through it, because you are, as a GM, you're in complete control of that. Now, it might be, if you're playing a written campaign, that it says, here, if they do this and they fail this, it means they're going to take this damage. Well, that's what the guidebook says, yeah? Right. But your players, their characters, where they are. It may be the book doesn't know that last session one of the characters set fire to something and burnt themselves and they're down 6 hit points, so they're not on full. So if you make the roll as in the book, well, there's a good chance they're going to die over nothing. Again, it's going to be one of their meaningless deaths.
And exactly.
So, but you as a GM, you're going to mitigate that. You're going to actually just going to take 2 points of damage or no damage at all, because you are grading that. You're tailoring it to your gaming session, and so
I was going to say, and that's something I promised my players right at the beginning. It was one of the rules I set aside when we first started was I will not let your character die unless you say, it's time. Like, we've had it happen almost a few times where one of our nobody's died yet. Yeah. It's funny. We're taking our long time. We're taking the roundabout route because we started just over a year ago, and we're now in London. We're now in the 3rd chapter. Okay. But that's fine because we're loving it. But we had somebody I had somebody snake person told one of the players to kill another player. They stabbed them and they rolled extreme success, so they did maximum damage, and the character would have just died. But it didn't feel right. And so, somebody was lucky enough to remember, well, I remember I created that charm from that thing and maybe that can save her life. And I was like, yep, done. Yeah. That's how that saved her life. You get to, I'm not going to kill a player character, But like, if there's a moment where you didn't even take that much damage, but if you feel like, can I grab the ghoul and jump off the cliff with it?
Yeah.
I know I'm going to die, but I feel
But
like this is a moment to save the rest of the group. Then yeah, please, that's the way to go.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
the whole. I mean, back in 1983, the term player agency didn't exist. Yeah. And,
No.
and so, you know, we kind of grew up with the idea that
no X cards,
yeah,
no.
I mean, I grew up with the idea of, you know, from D&D onwards that, you know, it was kind of me versus the players as a GM.
Oh yeah.
You know, my job was to try and kill them off as quickly as possible and have fun. You know, and that kind of worked, you know, 50 years ago. But I think we've come a long way since then, and I think now we get
leaps and bounds.
You know, we get a lot more out of it actually by having the players have some role in the game. And it's not adversarial. It's about actually, you know, the role of the GM is I say is like a facilitator. You know, I'm a player too, so I'm helping the other players facilitate their game. And so, I want to cheerlead the players, the characters. I want them to succeed because, you know, I mean, you know, if I put it down in the most basis way of expressing this, I just spent $100 on masks. Yeah. I want the players and me to get my money's worth out of the book. I don't want to.
This is my third time trying it, and this is the first time I've made it to London. So
in scenario 1, because I've got $90 less worth from that book. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
I want to enjoy the dang book. Yes.
Yeah. Follow up on a sanity question, just because there's another question I had. And again, as the keeper of arcane lore in a major campaign like this, I have been struggling with this idea. So, you know, we know what happens when you have a mental break. You know, it creates these personality traits. It creates these things that happen. But how do you handle, like, let's say over several sessions, several weeks in game, they've lost 10 sanity points, 1, 2, 3 at a time. How do you? I don't want to say like. How do you remind the player? Like, how do you encourage the players to play that sanity?
Okay.
Like, I had a good example of a player who just got cold as time went on, but she did that on her own. If she hadn't done that, then how do I do it? As a keeper?
Okay. There's two things to bear in mind. There's in terms of sanity loss specifically for Cthulhu, there's the drip kind of gradual erosion, which is what you're talking about, and then there's the kind of big sudden loss where you may have a more dramatic kind of immediate effect on the character.
And it's easier for the player to forget it when it's a drip, right?
Exactly. So, but I think the kind of answer, you can use the same answer for both. It's like, I guess what I'm trying to say is often the player is the answer. Often it is to say to the player, okay, hey, you've been having this kind of gradual loss of sanity over the last month of play or whatever it is. Remember, you found that book, and then you ran into that strange looking thing in the swamp, and then that happened, and do you remember? You remember all the and they players? Oh yeah. So what effect is that having on your character now? And
what are your dreams look like?
Ask the player to kind of, again, I'm trying to give the player agency so they can determine their own fate, but because you're prompting them and you're reminding them of what they lost sanity for, because it may be when you say that they go blank and they can't really think of anything. You say, well, what do you think of the three things I just mentioned that happened to you where you lost sanity? Which is the one do you think your character remembers the most, or the one that keeps?
What do they see when they close their eyes?
One that you keep dreaming about, And then focus down on. Let's just say it was the thing in the swamp, and just say, So maybe, as an idea, maybe you can't stop seeing that thing when you go to sleep. Or the trouble is,
that smell of the swamp has never kind of left
every
your nose.
time you look into a dark room or down an alley, you get the sense of something moving down the end, And it's like, and I'm not going to, and maybe you're going to be a bit cautious about going down there. Maybe that you're feeling there's something horrible down there, and so quite naturally you don't want to go down there. So maybe if that's a situation, I'm going to say, hey, if you make a power roll, you can kind of overcome it and you can go there. But until you make that, you kind of back on away, or you.
Ooh, I like that.
I love that.
Kind of, but try to just build off. And it maybe the player doesn't need that, and they'll just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do. My character, decided to start eating flowers every day or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But,
No, that's it. And it's like you can do that with one player, and then maybe the other players start going, well, I want to have a weird thing too now. So I'm going to.
I've often found, and I know Paul Fricker, my kind of writing colleague, has often said this same thing as he's with his scripts is, if you set the tone as the keeper. So if you do voices or accents for your NPCs, it's more likely your players will feel comfortable enough to do an accent for their character. If you're not comfortable doing that as a keeper, it's probably unlikely that your players are going to do it because they will take the tone and the vibe from you. Yep. And that's fine. You don't have to do that, but you set the tone is what I'm trying to say. So if you set the tone in terms of, that kind of asking the players, for their input on a semi-regular basis, they'll get into the habit of it. And between sessions, they'll start to think of ideas to bring to the game, not just be reacting to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because there's that trust. Yeah. You're building that trust, and they know that they can come to you and say, oh, hey, remember we were talking about that swamp thing? Yeah, the smell was great. The back alley was great. But I thought about this other thing. Because they know that you're not going to relentlessly punish them for it. You're going to bring it into the story, and it's going to entertain everybody at the table. Yeah. I love that.
The thing is,
I want to do an episode about the knife theory, which is we'll get into, but it's basically when you're building a character, you're creating little points in the backstory that you're handing knives to your GM to stab you with later.
I was literally about to say the same thing and say that when you can start with a player, at a certain point in the game where they start to kind of help to define what is changing in their character, that also helps you to then have conversations maybe out of game or on the side of saying, hey, you know what? If your character, does end up meeting Cthulhu, what do you think it's going to? Are you going to go all out with this swamp thing? Are you going to become the thing in the swamp, or are you going to? Where do you think you might go? And not to say that is exactly what will happen, but you are helping to guide the player to what might be the end of their character in a sense. How do they think their character might end if it all goes to hell?
That's a good question.
And they have the reward from that. They walk away from the table. They're like, well, what happened? Oh, I went crazy, but this is what happened.
You're helping to define this character arc, and you're getting them to, define it themselves and invest in it. And so, and as you say, if you can reward them in play by saying, hey, that's, as an aside, you're playing into your character arc. That's really cool. I'm going to give you 5 luck points just because I think you're doing a really cool thing. Or here's a couple of sanity points because in the nature of the game, you've taken it. You're taking the afternoon off and you've had a breather and you're feeling a lot better about yourself. I don't know, whatever it may be, but you can give. It might just be I'm going to give you a bonus die to use whenever you like during the session. These are all.
That's good. I like that. I like that. I like that.
Rules. These aren't written into the game rules, but we're all role players. We all tinker with the rules, and you make the game work for you. And so, if you can find a way to reward your players so they increase that investment, then why not? It doesn't hurt the game.
Yeah.
So
that's fantastic.
Yeah. We have a character, a player whose character has been. It's the biggest thing you can do wrong in Call of Cthulhu is have a character with lots of intelligence and low sanity. But he has lost a lot, and he's he's starting to ask me questions like, if I lose all my sanity, will my character be a really cool bad guy after that? Can he start his own cult? And I'm like, sure, man, let's talk about that. That's cool.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. I was, oh my God.
There's so many questions, maybe.
I know, right? It's like, it's all there. It's like, oh my God.
If you got one more, let's go for it. I don't know if we want to, I'm happy to talk with Mike for another hour, but I just want to make sure.
We are coming up on time though. That's a good point. Well,
We can always do a two-parter, but let's just maybe call it soon.
I like that, actually.
It's got to be late over there in across the pond.
I'm good for a little longer. Carry on.
Okay. Hello, gentle viewer. Thanks so much for watching that episode. Wasn't it great? Mike is such an amazing dude. He did stick around. We did continue for another 20 minutes of conversation, which we have available for our Patreon supporters at the $0 level and above. If you want to support us at the $5 level, that's Canadian dollars, by the way. So whatever that is in American or British pounds or wherever you support. And you get access to more stuff too. We also played a game with Mike that we've been playing with a bunch of our guests that's going to start launching in September. All kinds of fun stuff. We've got Patreon. If you're a member of our Patreon, you get to join our Discord. If you're at the good or gooder or goodest level, you get to also join the Good Place, which is a spot just for Patreons to talk about how much they love me and hate Chuck, or vice versa. I'm just kidding. We love you both. We both love you. That's what I should have said. Anyway, patreon.com/Good GMs Podcast to watch the rest of this episode. And stay tuned, because coming up in the next little while, we have John Hook. In the next couple of weeks, we've got Kelly Clark from Dork Tales. We have who else? We got Carl Kiesler coming up. If you know Savage Worlds, you know Carl Kiesler. We have a bunch of other stuff coming up. More Chuck and James. More. We got interviews with more people, and so stay tuned. Be with us. Be good. What do you have to say? Anything else? No. Okay. Be good. Bye.
Thank you for watching. If you like or dislike what you heard, let us know. If you want to suggest an idea for an episode, ask the host a question, or just tell Chuck and James what you really think of them, join our communities at patreon.com/Good GMs Podcast, or find us on the usual social media platforms. For now, I'm E.E. Morris, and you're all good GMs. We are so grateful to all of our Patreon supporters. At the gooder level, Weird Candy. At the good level, Carl Kiesler, Preston DuBose, Francis, and me. Yes, E.E. Morris. I put my own money to back our projects because we're all good GMs.